Alex and Sandra Harris arrived to view a house, but the white realtor dismissively refused them. Unaware they owned a real estate agency, they decided to fight, not just for themselves, but for everyone facing racial injustice. Their next move will surprise even the most seasoned onlookers. But let's start from the beginning. Alex and Sandra Harris, owners of a major real estate agency, decided to visit a home in a prestigious neighborhood that their company planned to add to its portfolio. Dressed simply, Alex in a short-sleeved shirt and dark pants, Sandra in an elegant blue dress, they walked into the real estate office, where they were greeted by David Marshall, an arrogant realtor with white hair and a cold stare. "How can I help you?" he asked condescendingly, sizing them up. "We'd like to view the house on Lakeview Drive," Alex calmly replied, pulling out a printout of the listing. Marshall raised an eyebrow, glancing over them as if assessing whether they were suited for the neighborhood. His smile faded. "I'm sorry, but that house is already reserved," the realtor replied sharply, without bothering to suggest alternatives. Sandra, feeling the clear disdain, silently looked at her husband. Alex decided to clarify. "Aren't there any other options available in the area?" he asked. Marshall smirked and crossed his arms, his voice laced with thinly veiled sarcasm. "In these neighborhoods, not every home is suitable for everyone. Maybe you should look for something more modest." Alex and Sandra exchanged glances, realizing they were facing blatant discrimination. Alex clenched his fists, wanting to respond, but Sandra gently touched his arm. "Let's leave," she said quietly, holding back her anger. The couple left, leaving David Marshall smug in his belief that he had done the right thing. But as Alex walked back to the car, he thought, he has no idea who we are. That evening, back in their cozy home, Alex and Sandra discussed what had happened. Sitting at the dining table, with the windows open and a soft breeze rustling the curtains, Alex was still angry and tense, fidgeting with his phone, while Sandra stared thoughtfully into the distance. "This is too much," Alex said hoarsely. "We're not just clients. We own the company. He has no right to act like that." Sandra nodded, but her gaze remained focused. She remembered how her parents, also successful, had faced similar discrimination when she was a child. The sense of helplessness had hurt deeply back then, and she had vowed never to let it happen to her. "You know, Alex," she said slowly, turning to him, "this isn't just a personal insult. It's not just about us. We need to do something, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who faces this every day." Alex looked at his wife, realizing she was right. The system they had encountered was deeply entrenched, and they had a duty to change it. "We'll go back there," he declared firmly. "But this time, they'll know who we really are." Sandra agreed, her resolve hardening. She knew that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up for justice for those without a voice. "We'll show them they can't keep getting away with this," she replied determinedly. "We have to do it." They prepared for the next day, knowing that their return to the office would mark a turning point. The next day, Alex and Sandra returned to the real estate office, but this time, they were ready to act. In Alex's hands was a folder containing documents proving that they were the owners of the real estate agency where David Marshall worked. Their steps were confident as they walked into the office. David Marshall, seeing them, sighed, but this time, his irritation was thinly disguised. He hurried to wrap up his conversation with another client and approached them. "You're back again?" His voice was dripping with annoyance. "I told you that house is unavailable." Alex, ignoring his cold attitude, opened the folder and handed him the documents. "We need to talk," Alex said calmly, locking eyes with David. Marshall glanced at the papers, initially with a slight smirk, but as he read, his expression changed. His eyes widened, and his face grew pale as he realized that standing before him were the owners of the very company he worked for. You, owners?" he stammered, struggling to form words. Sandra tilted her head slightly, her gaze icy and piercing. "Yes, and we want to discuss your behavior yesterday," she said firmly. "The way you treated us was unacceptable. Your actions showed just how deeply racism runs in this industry." Marshall nervously began to stammer out excuses, sweating and fumbling for words, but Alex cut him off. "We're not here for explanations. We're here to tell you that this kind of behavior will no longer be tolerated. This agency was built on principles of equality and fairness, and there's no place for you here if you don't share those values." Marshall was speechless. He realized his career was in jeopardy, and his face reflected a mix of fear and shame. Alex and Sandra turned and left the office, leaving Marshall to face the consequences of his actions alone. After Alex and Sandra's departure, David Marshall remained in shock. He realized that his arrogance and prejudice had led to the worst, his dismissal. News of the incident spread quickly among the agency's staff and clients, sparking heated discussions. Marshall was forced to resign, but this was only the beginning of broader changes. Alex and Sandra chose not to keep the incident quiet. They publicly shared their story through media and social networks, highlighting how systemic racism continued to permeate various sectors, including business and real estate. Their story sparked a wide-reaching response, with support pouring in from across the country. "We're not going to stand by and watch people be denied their rights because of the color of their skin," Sandra declared in a television interview. "We have to fight this, and it starts with exposing cases like this." The story became a symbol of the fight for justice and equality, drawing attention to deeper issues of discrimination in the real estate industry and society as a whole. Alex and Sandra's company implemented new standards promoting equality and inclusivity, further solidifying their reputation as industry leaders. "We didn't do this just for ourselves," Alex concluded. "This is a step toward ensuring that situations like this never happen to anyone again." The story ends on a high note, showing how confronting prejudice and standing up against injustice can transform society.